Okay, this is, I forget what episode this is, but it's season 2, and I'm here with Dr. Tom Christie. It's my guest. And we have no idea what we're going to talk about. So does anything come to mind?
Well, what comes to mind is the fact that son-in-law and father don't fall together terribly easily, because there's this sense of there's a role for fathers and there's a role for son-in-laws. And we try to make it come out so that it comes out well for everybody. And how do we do that? Because, first of all, father-in-laws do not like to watch people argue. That's hard, and it's even harder if it's your daughter that is at the end of it. So there's a problem right there. And then there's just the normal way of how one lives. We live differently. We have different hopes and we have different goals for ourselves. And they're mashed up together like two tectonic plates squashing together to make everything come out okay. And of course the hardest thing is that when you disagree with your daughter and you don't want to say that out loud, that's kind of a nerve-wracking experience. But nevertheless, unfortunately, if you decide, if it works out and you go on, and what you have are two different personalities coming together and wanting to be successful, one with the other. But that's an important thing. It's important. It's important for daughter. It's important for kids. And so, how does it work out? And I think it works out pretty well. There have been, the tight spots that I talk about people being angry on one side or the other side. Is that right? And maybe not. So it really is helpful in not trying to be totally how this should work. It should have its loose ends and dragged around maybe even and said, well, okay, we'll make it work. And I think it has worked. I'm at a point where I have lost my partner. And that is a sadness. And you think, what would she say and what would she want to do and how would she do it? And so that's one more thing to think about, is how and what. But generally speaking, as I said, we do okay. And I think it works out okay because I can appreciate Greg's effort to bring something to his life, and by bringing something to his life, making it a good life for everyone else. And so he and I can somewhat disagree about some of the bigger things of life, but when it comes down to away from philosophical treaties, we have a way to get together because our goals are, I think, very much the same. And that is to say that it provides a good life for each and every person, from the oldest to the youngest kid. And that is what I think has pretty much happened. My age and infirmities are taken into account. And I take into account, this is the way I think it should be, but I don't get involved too much in, this is the way I think it should be. I let Greg make his decisions about some of these things, and especially about how the kids fit in. And that has, as I would say, has worked out very well. Okay, anything more? What do you think?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is knowing me now and looking back at Liz when she was 11 or 12, would you have recommended me as a partner for her?
Well, that's a long story. All by itself, it's a longer story. Because indeed, when Joan was still living, we did from time to time entertain Greg in different ways. And in that we found that Elizabeth was kind of tough on that and how she wanted it. And there were times when we said, Greg, go your way and do your life. I don't know how much she wants to bring to your life, but I think you can do it. And it's tough, and you're going to have to end up with what you end up with. And thank God it ended up the way it ended up, and it's very positive. But it's a process, one of those great processes of human beings. One of the things that offhand you say doesn't make relationships stronger, but it does make relationships stronger because it's trying to understand two people and a whole bunch of others, and how do they all fit together to bring about something that works for both people and allows them to go on and live their lives as a separate people. And fortunately, by the time it all got around to it, the living together worked out very nicely. Anything more?
Well, I question my ability to be a provider, and it seems as a husband and a father, that's a key component to those characters, husband, father.
Well, yes. And I think that as I go through that provider for your sense of not providing sometimes. I think I had a goal and I simply did it. I can remember back at 7:15 at South Elm in Champaign on a sunny afternoon in my decision to become a dentist and to push that as the way that I wanted to do. I needed to do it because the university requires you make up your mind anyhow. And while you can bounce around a lot, I decided I didn't want to bounce around a lot. And there were certain things that were important to me. And so those things continued to motivate me through this life, and in the end to work out okay. It worked out okay. I enjoyed it very much. I had a long and good life with all these things that were happening. And in terms of being a provider, it's pretty good. And but it's the one thing that probably worries me more than any other thing is that little bit of discrepancy. And I don't think it's as big as it really is, much bigger than I see it. But this has something to worry about in the sense of the relationship between two people. When one of them is going off in one direction, satisfied in one direction, and another person is pushing to try to get going in another direction. And one would hope that that can be accomplished by two people understanding what is important for one person and for the other person, and being able to make it work, to sympathize one and the other as to where the other person is, and to bring about, to be honest, a harmonious relationship. It's scary in that there's always the risk that you're going to be not to fit together right, and one person is going to get hurt, or both people are going to get hurt, and so to try to hope that that doesn't happen. Anything else?
Well, I'm believing you're referring to Liz and my relationship.
Yes.
Any practical advice you would give us?
Practical advice, I think that what brings about a harmonious relationship, and I am a person that does not believe 100% in harmonious relationships. I look at it and feel that it's one of our duties in this world is try to make this work. And we never know. It's always hard to say that when you get out there, are you way far away from somebody else's feelings and you don't learn them right away or easily. But I think that that is a a goal for me has been to try to make all of the different relationships and people that come through my entire life, for that matter, that it comes out okay. But it's not perfect. There are bound to be arguments, bound to be different directions, bound to be hurt feelings. And I just kind of hope that that's a minimum. And that it probably the most difficult one, I would say, is the one that we have. That there are 3 different kinds of people, and can it be made to work? But my role, and I'm only talking about that, in my role in trying to help with how this is going to work. Anything more to think of?
Well, I notice that you're speaking in very broad terms. It seems there's an element of diplomacy in that.
Well, that was always my life's work, was to, for diplomacy. Students between one another, students and faculty between one another. And so I do that, and I am trying to find and use the nuggets that can make this thing work. And that's not always easy. In the case of relationships this way, it's not near as bad as between faculty and students.
Maybe because there's only 2 people involved.
Right.
If we were Mormon, it might be a different story.
If
we were Mormon, it might be a different
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Well, if you were a betting person, what would you say the odds are for Liz and I remaining together for the rest of our life? Till death do us part.
Oh, is that a fair question?
You don't have to answer it.
I think that your relationship with Liz has grown in these years. And that's all I can say at this point. It's grown. And sometimes I feel, oops, too much, oops, not enough. And I feel sometimes that the big blockade is me. And I have to watch that. And I can step back, try to step back, and let the rest of the world go by. And not interfere with something that needs to be done. And maybe, I don't know, it doesn't seem to bother people that this happens publicly. I'm impressed with that. So that's a good sign. That's a powerful sign that things are rolling along quite nicely. But I can't answer a question that my 85 years tell me, is that you never know what's going to happen. And so probably you should work toward it And I think that one of the ways to work toward it is things like bringing up children together, having some times for social life, because I'm a very strong believer in that husbands and wives should have something that's theirs. And that strikes me as a very, very important thing. But I don't know how that is going to work out. That sounds like it's hopeless, but I don't mean to say that. I mean to say it can work, and things can get difficult for a while, and things can get better for a while. And who knows? Who knows? Any other ideas?
Well, I will say I have never had any inkling that you were in the way of Liz and I being together.
Okay. Well, it's very important to me to think and try not to be. And it's a lot of people, because everybody is growing up and going into something, and everything as far as the children are concerned has yet to happen. You know, I noticed today that Robin is in New York City, and of course, the first thing she's organized is a parade down Broadway, and I hope she sees it, watches it, and has fun with what she's created. You can take that with a grain of salt. But there is something about Robin, for example, that causes me to say, well, in her way, she's going to create a parade. And that's fun. That's fun. But it still brings in a third person, very much a third person, into the mixture. And who knows? Who knows?
Well, it does seem true that there's no telling the future. Anything can happen. And I do think we live in a household where everyone, on the whole, supports the whole.
Well, I think that is true, very true. That is the most important thing of all, is the whole. Is the relationship between this bunch of people, and as I say, being added on to significantly as the kids grow up. As the kids grow up. In my life, the role that Robin played is very large. The role that Jonah played has still other perspective in what he will never know or understand is how much support his being Jonah made in my darkest hours. And it's true that doesn't go on forever. I know that from my own life, that children and relationship changes through time. But at the right time, it was very, very, very much is giving me a lot. So I guess in a way that was, he didn't quite realize it, but he was himself. And being himself, he made this enormous contribution, as Robin does, as Lizzie does, and as even Bodhi does. It's all very special. And it's what's the field that this takes place in? It really is quite enormous for the different people and different people. A response to being themselves, and being themselves becomes important to other people in some important way, and that's what makes the family really powerful, is that it just happens. And that's all I can say about it. So in the end, at the moment, I can say that, like many people say to me, "Oh my God, you got 3 kids, you know, there's no way to retire. Oh my God, this is a mess, it's too hard." And then they stop and they think. So they recognize that, hey, it's a pretty good life. Yeah. Anything else?
It sounds good to me.
Yeah. Is that what you're looking for?
Sure. I will say I'm grateful that you are in my life. I'm grateful for the support you give me. And I'm grateful that when I'm looking for you to take my side when things are hard with Liz, you don't. I respect that. That is, I've come to admire your diplomacy and your ability to quietly let things unfold. And I'm very grateful for this household.
Well, I am too. And my father had certain things that he believed in. And most of all, he believed in standing up and being counted. And he believed along with that we all had a role in this life. And that we should think about what our role is and try to do it. And if we do that, that's all that's going to be expected of us, is to try to make life good for everybody that you can.
All right. You okay if we stop here?
Yeah,
All right. Thank you.
you're welcome. I don't know. Did you say enough?
Okay, so we have a prologue.
Yes. Yeah. And well, prologues, okay now?
Mm-hmm.
Prologues are interesting, I guess. And other ways, not so interesting. And what I can say is that this part of my life is a prologue. There is not the same continuation of a story. Life is slowed down, and one is just not the same anymore. It's just not the same. The prologue is what happens at the end, and it brings in some of, and makes clear some of the things that happen. And one of the things that for me is important is to go back a long time ago and be able to say where this 11-year-old fit into my life. And it may be questioned about what I'm going to say, but I felt she was on my side in relationship with her mother. And as a person, there was so much that I could enjoy and see about this young woman. And all of this meant for me that I could have, it just worked out beautifully. Nobody could ask for anything better than how Liz and I have managed to live together in our way. It goes back a long ways. And so what I could say is that of all the people in this world who are important to me, she was and is my good fortune to be very special kind of friend. And that somehow has worked well all of these years. And I am thankful for it.
It's perfect.
Thank you for doing it over again.
Cut.
For you, not me. It's a beautiful world. It's a beautiful